Hello, and welcome to today's edition of the Live and Invest Overseas podcast. I'm Kat Kalashian, and today, as you can see, we're unabashedly embracing the holiday season. I personally am a big fan, so I am going all in. Why not let all of the merriment shine today for these few videos? So, excuse me, I'm a Christmas dork, and I'm going to put it all out there on these next few videos. We're going to talk about how the holidays are celebrated all over the world in some of our most celebrated, our favorite destinations overseas. So we're going to start over here in Europe with the some of the fun traditions that you might encounter in some of the countries that you might be living in over here. So first in Spain, one of the definitely I would say the oddest traditions that I've heard around the world is the Catalan version of the Yule log, which is called a Tio de Nadal, which is a little Christmas log. The Cagatillo, as it is known, literally translates to a pooping log, and these are bought and put by the fireplace on December 8th, which is the Feast of the Immaculate Conception in the Catholic calendar. He's basically just a little wooden log like you would expect in a fireplace, but he's got little stick legs and 4 stick legs, so he stands up a little bit. He's got a little red hat. It's a little Catalan beret at a jaunty little angle. He's got a perky face with big red cheeks and happy eyes and a smile. And he is fed and watered every evening and covered at night with a blanket. On Christmas Eve, everyone in the family, ending with the youngest, will start to whack him with a stick like a piñata while everyone sings. And I'll do the translation here. My Catalan isn't so great. But the translation is Christmas log, don't poop sardines. They're too salty. Poop turrons. They're much better. Turrons are the little local nougat and nut desserts that you get in Spain. The pace and the force of the hitting all pick up with a bit of ferocity. The final blow is meant to come from the youngest member of the family, and that persuades him to finally poop some candy out from under his blanket, which is usually the little turrones, the little nuggets of white nougat. And one thing that I thought was funny when I was there recently, I asked, well, how does it actually, how do the parents get the log to poop without the kids seeing it? And so often what they'll say is that the log is too shy to poop in front of people. So kids leave the house, give them some privacy, go outside or into the other room for a few minutes. And while the kids are out of the room, the parents will shove a bunch of candy under the blanket. And then the kids come back in, they lift the blanket, and voila, miraculous candies from the log. So definitely one of the stranger traditions that I've ever heard of. And this scatological tendency doesn't end there. In the Catalan nativity, there is an extra character that doesn't appear in any other nativity scene anywhere else in the world. He's called the caganer. He's the pooper. And essentially he is this little imp of a guy who pulls his pants down and moons the whole scene, the whole religious scene going on. And there are a lot of different theories for, what the reason for this is, what the tradition is. One of the nicer ones probably is that the Catalans have a deep respect for a cycle of life. And so, even as we are talking about these celestial things, we should be remembering that, everything goes back to the earth. We fertilize the earth using manure, and it takes all sides of things, including the manure, to create a happy, balanced lifestyle. So kind of a little bit of realism, into that possibly heavenly scene otherwise. Another one is just that Catalans are, like to stick their thumb up at things and turn their nose up at things and make fun of things. And so even the most serious moments should have a little bit of fun in them and shouldn't be taken too seriously. So definitely an odd one there. If you're ever in Catalonia, I recommend going to a Christmas store or a Caganer store to buy your own little pooper. Poopers these days, they used to just be a kind of little impish guy, but these days anyone who has made a newspaper, any kind of headline, any kind of celebrity of any sort, good or bad, revered or hated, local or global, you are very likely to see them turned into a Caganer. So when I was there recently, I bought my own little version of the Caganer that spoke to me personally. So you can go there and choose from many, many different kinds of Caganer. In the UK, things are a little bit more refined, although not too much, with the UK's Panto. So in London especially, but all over the UK, pantomime shows, which are known simply as Panto, are still done live, and it's a great tradition at Christmas. The tradition actually goes back to the restoration after Cromwell's Commonwealth. So when the monarchy took over again, it ended what was known as a puritanical period under Cromwell, when Christmas was actually banned as a pagan holiday. And so nobody was allowed to celebrate anything to do with Christmas. During the restoration, when the monarchy came back into power, theater was allowed again, Christmas was allowed again, and one of the things that they invented was putting the two together and creating this pantomime, really for children, but it's as much for adults as for children, as any British person would tell you. So there are many conventions to it. The hero, in a reversal of roles, is usually played by a young actress, along with the hero's love interest. Then there's the old dame, an older woman played by a man in drag. There's also the good fairy and the wicked witch, or usually, not always, but usually, and those are also played by a man in drag. There's a chorus, which will change costume quite frequently, and sometimes also children that will dance. Sometimes even famous actors or actresses might take part. And there's usually a scene where a great big mess is made, either by cooking or baking, with lots of flour tossed about by the puppets. It's very much a give and a take, so the audience is very engaged with lots of silly dialogue and, call and response. There's a lot of double entendre. If you've ever heard or seen one of these pantos, you know that half of the jokes are very bawdy jokes that we hope go over the kids' heads. And it is more modern these days, with now themes becoming much more diverse, with, Hanukkah, Bollywood, modern TV shows are all part of the panto lineup these days. So something to check out when you're in London. In France, in my adopted new home overseas, Christmas is a very late night affair. It's one that I absolutely am not made for. I'm not cut out for the late night holidays. So it starts here with Christmas Mass, a midnight Mass, which is true in many parts of the world. Even in the US, of course, midnight Mass is still held. But for most of the rest of the world, midnight Mass is really obligatory. It's the beginning of the Christmas everything. So, that's really what all families are staying up for. They go to this midnight Mass, they'll come home, and they'll have a giant Christmas dinner when they get home. So say Mass is an hour, you get home at 1:30. You have dinner from maybe 1:30 to 4:30 or so, because this is supposed to be a very formal French dinner with many courses, coffee at the end. You sit down over many hours to get this dinner out, and it ends before dawn, because the sun doesn't rise until around 9 o'clock these days. So it's well before dawn when things end. So maybe around 5 or 6 in the morning, you'll have your coffee, you'll open some presents, and everybody will get to bed. Most people then are in bed until noon or after. And then the rest of the day is nothing. The Christmas day, nothing. There's no tradition. There's nothing that really happens. All the festivities are over by that point, and it's an excuse to relax and rest and spend time with family. You might have a very casual meal in the afternoon, but nothing very fancy or ceremonial in any way. On the other hand, one of my favorite things about Christmas in France is the seafood element, which is funny because Paris is such a landlocked city, although we do have the Seine running through, of course. You're not going to get any oysters or fresh fish from the Seine, but there is a huge tradition of shellfish at Christmas time, especially in Paris. Oysters, the whole city is taken over, especially on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. You'll see truckloads of oysters, every single restaurant, cafe, usually even the grocery stores. You'll see them being sold on the side of the street. Everyone is selling oysters, eating oysters, and it's a very fun little tradition. Mussels are also a tradition that I love to embrace around Christmas time. So it's not something that we North Americans generally associate with Christmas, but I love the excuse to have some good shellfish this time of year. And it's funny, one of the things that a very traditional thing that you see here in Paris is you'll see oysters hanging out of windows or sitting on windowsills. So if somebody doesn't have a terrace, they have no room in their fridge, and you don't really want to store shellfish in your fridge, it makes everything smell like oysters for the rest of the week. So you'll see people just hanging them, maybe sometimes closing the top of the bag in their window. So they'll just hang down from the window. You might see them hanging off of, off of a planter, off of a balcony. But look around if you're here in December, you'll see oysters in all forms everywhere. And one little bit of trivia that I think is really fun about this tradition of oysters in Paris, because it is a bit of a random thing, how, this is a landlocked city. Oysters shouldn't be something that was ever historically associated with the city. And it's actually credited to Henry IV, French King Henry IV, who was a great lover of all pleasures in life. So he was a great food lover and also known himself as a great lover. So he had this huge love of oysters, and it was said that he had 3 dozen brought to him on a wagon every day from Brittany during the winter oyster season. And so thanks to that, Parisians got used to having oysters in the city in December. But it is funny as well that the history there got a little bit muddled. And so it is thought that perhaps one of the reasons that people think oysters are an aphrodisiac is thanks to Henry IV, who loved oysters and then also loved women. And, people put the two together and conflated them. So perhaps we have him to thank as well for thinking that oysters are an aphrodisiac. In Ireland, where I lived for 7 years, the Christmas season begins on the last Friday in November, which is the evening of the broadcast of the Late Late Toy Show, which has been broadcast ever since 1975. All of the kids in Ireland across the country are allowed to stay up late. It's a big family night, by the fireplace. You get to stay up past midnight, watch this TV show, write down the toys you want for your Christmas list, and everything kicks off from there. The day after Christmas, on the other hand, is St. Stephen's Day, and is another very famous part of the Christmas tradition that isn't typically known of elsewhere. It's known as Wren's Day, or simply the Wren. And so this goes back to the 1800s when boys would hunt a real wren, kill it, and they would tie it to a holly branch or a pole and parade it all around town. They would go door to door begging for money as a thank you, because wrens were thought to be evil. So they killed the wren, and people should thank them for doing that city service. And the money that they would earn would then be put towards a Christmas dance for the whole town on Boxing Day. This is absolutely a fading tradition. These days, it's very rare to find this in any part of the country. Of course, live birds are no longer used if it is practiced anywhere. There are a couple places where you could still witness this. In Dingle in County Kerry, December 26th is still a major date on the social calendar. So if you want to witness that, get over there before it is fully extinct. And then on January 6th, again, obviously after Christmas, is the Feast of the Epiphany, or everywhere else in the world. But in Ireland, it's known as Nollaig na Ban, or Women's Christmas. Pretty sure I might have said that wrong. It might be Van. Nollaig na Ban. Anyway, the point is, it's Women's Christmas. It's a very strong tradition in especially the southwest counties, for example, Cork and Kerry, where it's known as Women's Annual Day Off. This goes back to when Irish women were having multiple digits of children and rearing them pretty much all by themselves, running a household by themselves with very little help from the men factor of the household. And, they had to put on all of Christmas and do everything else for the family for Christmas. So they got very little rest over the month of December. And so this day was dedicated to women. It was their chance to relax. The men would step in for the day and take care of the house, and the women would go to the pub and enjoy some tea and fruitcake, or perhaps something a bit stronger. And going back to actual Christmas Day, though, this is the one that I remember personally. Christmas morning is the day for the Christmas swim. And so obviously Ireland is not warm at any time of year, let alone at Christmas, but everyone of all ages, all across the country, every single coastline, beach, no matter where you are in the country, you will see the Irish running into the ocean. It's called the Christmas swim, but it's more of a dip for most people. You don't actually need to swim a distance. You don't even actually need to get all the way into the water. You can run in up to your ankles. You can just splash your arms. That counts. It draws big crowds, so you'll have plenty of people to cheer you on from the beach when you go. Recently, you'll see kids in wetsuits, but among adults, this is an unspoken rule. Absolutely no wetsuits. And I could never bring myself to do it, but every single one of my friends did. I never heard the end of my faint-heartedness for never wanting to participate in this. I stood with many, many layers on the beach much cheering people on, but definitely a fun thing to witness, if not to partake in Ireland. And there you have it. Those are Europe's funniest Christmas traditions, some things you might encounter on this side of the pond if you end up becoming an expat in Europe. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, happy New Year, and very happy trails to everyone.